We are absolutely delighted to have Giants CEO Larry Baer, General Manager Brian Sabean, and Manager Bruce Bochy here tonight to enlighten us on all things Giants. With KNBR's Brian Murphy on deck to ask the pressing questions. But first, we have a little surprise. Ladies and gentlemen, from the cast of Beach Blanket Babylon, please welcome Tammy Nelson.
Larry Baer, Brian Sabean, and Bruce Bochy too. The San Francisco Giants are great because of you. Oh, what a day it's been. Tim Lincecum has done it again. We love this team because they're part of our great San Francisco. Open your golden gate, you let no stranger wait outside your door. San Francisco, here is your wandering one, saying I'll wander no more. The places only make me love you best. Tell me you're the heart of all the Golden West. San Francisco, welcome me home again. I'm coming home to go roaming no more. San Francisco, open your golden gate. You let no stranger wait outside your door. San Francisco, here is your wandering one, saying I'll wander no more. The places only make me love you best. Tell me you're the heart of all the Golden West. The Golden West. San Francisco, welcome me home again. I'm coming home to go roaming.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Brian Murphy from KNBR 680, the sports leader, and welcome to the first ever JCC gathering. First ever gathering of the Tim Lincecum two-time no-hit fan club, right? We gathered just you guys specially. We said he's going to do it again, and you're the first to hear about it. So congratulations to you guys. I don't even think I need to introduce them, but let's do it. Please welcome to my left, two-time World Series champion manager Bruce Bochy. We got to go easy on Bochy. He's got a double ear infection. So when the umpire talks back to him, he says, "What? I can't hear you. You still stink," is what he says. And in the middle, the architect, the man who's been here since 1997 and has built 2 World Series championship rosters, General Manager Brian Sabean.
Thank you.
Forgive Brian while he checks his cell phone for the waiver wire during the proceedings. Always working. And then the man, the San Franciscan himself, to my left, to the far left, a man who learned to swim on these very premises as a young lad growing up in the foggy Richmond district, the great Giants president, Larry Baer, ladies and gentlemen. Well, Larry, since this is a home game for you, we're going to start with you. This is your turf, this is your building, this is your neighborhood. Nice of you to arrange for a no-hitter on the nights we were doing this, because otherwise, guys, I was going to have to start with the organic garden, and I just didn't know what I was going to do. So, let's talk 55. Larry, you've been a Giants fan since you were born. You saw probably Gaylord Perry and Juan Marichal throw their no-hitters, Ed Halicki and John Montefusco, and then we had a long drought until their guy, Johnny Sanchez, then their guy, Kane, their guy, Lincecum, and now Timmy again. So can you just, from your perspective, from the perch on high, the executive perspective of what that meant today?
Well, first of all, I have to say we've been talking to Barbara Lane about, Brian, about getting a date for this, and it's taken about 3 years, 2.5, 3 years to get a date. Now I know why. We had to get the perfect date. This is the perfect date. What's interesting is, and sometimes when you're going through wonderful times with 2 World Series, thanks to these gentlemen and the club over the last 4 years, you don't really know what you're in the middle of. And something struck me today. I was listening to the radio, I guess, on station that you happen to work for, KNBR, and they were saying that it's pretty amazing. There's only 2 pitchers in the history of baseball that have won 2 World Series, thrown 2 no-hitters, and what was the other 2?
2 Cy Youngs.
And 2 Cy Youngs. Wondering what that other 2 was. And but the point being that, and I guess to answer your question, Brian, is just kind of put it in context. I think we're living something that's pretty rare, and we have to sometimes pinch ourselves and realize that we're in the middle of it. And there's, as Brian likes to say, there's a window, and we need to keep widening the window, and it's not easy to do. Sounds easy, maybe, or sounds like it's, it comes to be expected, but it's tough. And everybody here in this organization, front office, on the field, in the clubhouse, grinds hard to make this work. And but Timmy, I think one thing that we found with Timmy really from day one is that there's a sort of a love affair with him that the fans have. I mean, I think you guys love him, right? And that's born of a lot of things. And we've been with him in his ups and downs, and we've had to make decisions about re-signing him and everything. But I think he's sort of a part of the fabric of this community. And so a lot of random thoughts, but basically I think we're at a very special time, and we're very appreciative. And it certainly helps having the ballpark full when we're going through this time, too.
Yeah, it sure does. And you're right. It's a great point about how rare the window is, and that, especially for those of us who grew up from the candlestick era when it wasn't so great, right?
Yeah.
Brian Sabean came in 1997 and started making it great. 6 playoff appearances, 5 NL West, 2 World Series, always in contention. So, Brian, from your point of view today, kind of taking that and pulling back to a macro on Timmy himself, because you made the decision to re-sign him to a 2-year deal, and there were some fans who called into our radio show who, you'll be shocked to know, disagreed with you on that. Yeah, I know. And then he does something.
Wasn't here.
And then he does something like today. So how much can you enjoy that, and what did you notice about it?
Well, first of all, getting up this morning, and Bochy will tell you, we have a greater feel for the big picture. The players are so nose to the grindstone. And I was praying for a shutout. I said, the only way we're going to win today, the way we're going, is we're going to have to get a shutout. Timmy's got the it factor. I mean, what can I say? He's very comfortable on the mound. He's a real competitor, and I think through time we've seen him handle almost everything, including the times that haven't gone well for him. I think the biggest badge of courage that he's worn as a Giant really is overlooked when he went to the bullpen for us in 2012 and was a savior. And he's one of those guys that you wake up in the morning and you realize he can do something big, because he's got that in his past, and he's got that in his stomach, and we needed it. We surely needed it, and he has a knack for coming up big. We've seen that over time, so very timely, and I know it really relieved the tension around the ball club, and it gave him something to celebrate. Or remember how good we've played, and how big this season can become.
It's a great point about relieving the tension, because Boch was saying, just God, man, we needed something, and to get something so grand and historic and have so much fun. I don't know if you noticed, the TV cameras caught you guys celebrating with the helmet and the yes, and all that stuff. So maybe it was a little invasive, but we got a peek at your guys' celebrations. You got some wacky guys in there, Bruce.
We did.
But I want to ask you, so you're in the dugout, and like we said, no joke, he's got the double ear infection, he's not feeling good, his team's lost 10 of 13, it's his old club across the way, and so, as today unfolds, how was it looking to you? Did he look different in any way today, or what did you do? Give us the inside baseball perspective of how he did it on the mound, 60 feet, 6 inches, what you saw.
He did look different from the first inning, and like Brian said, we needed a shutout, but not just a shutout. We needed our pitcher to hit a home run too. He didn't hit a home run, but he got 2 hits and scored 2 runs. So it was a Timmy Lincecum show. But you could see he just had a great look about him, a calmness about him. He was in a good rhythm, and I give Hector Sanchez credit for keeping him in that rhythm. But I remember right before he went out to the mound, it was really quiet in our dugout. Normally it's not. So, I think the guys were a little down. I mean, we haven't been playing very good here at home, but, Pablo walked up to Timmy and says, we really need you today, and there's a serious thing going on in the dugout because, we're tired of getting beat here at home. And when Timmy went out there, I said this in the postgame, the 3rd or 4th inning, I just had a feeling. I said, this guy's got a chance to do this, because, there's sometimes you can tell when he's overhyped, he gets a little herky-jerky or gets out of his delivery, his rhythm. He's missing spots by a long ways, but he was right there keeping the ball down, changing speeds, and it just had a great look about him. And he took it to the plate too. So it was a much needed win. This team needed a shot in the arm with what's happened here the last 2 weeks. Yeah, my goodness, what a great day, and a great day to celebrate here. So let's follow off on that, Bruce, and talk about the hot start, 42-21. We all expected you to win 112 games this year, right? It's kind of what our minimum bar coming out of Scottsdale, right? So 42-21 is a joke. You can't sustain it. It's just not baseball. But you said things were down and there was tension. Just take us, maybe these guys don't get a chance to be in the clubhouse and be in the dugout. When you're losing, when you've gone from so hot to so cold, what's it like? What do you do as a manager to try to handle it? Well, it's hard for a club when you've had you've had as much success as we've had. I mean, everything's going right, and then now it's flipped on you, and what can go wrong has gone wrong. I mean, our pitching left us. We weren't swinging the bats so well. We had them both working at one point there, and so as a manager, you're trying to think of what you can do to shake things up or get them out of it, and so that's ongoing. And but we did. I mean, we've had little meetings. I've had meetings with core players. We had a team meeting, and part of one meeting, the basic theme was, I told the guys, I said, what's going to define us as a team? Is it what's happened here the last 10 games, or what happened the 60-plus games? Let's decide who we are. It's just like a player. When he loses his confidence, he may make an error. Crawford could make 20 great plays and make an error. Well, what's going to define him as a player? That error or those 20 great plays? And that's how I think you become resilient as a player or a team, by being able to handle, those little hiccups, those bumps in the road. And so, that's what, you try to do to get the players to get back to believing really who we are. It's not the bump in the road, because you're going to have them in 162 games. You're going to have to deal with it. That's not the question. The question is, how are you going to handle it? And this is what we're getting tested right now to see how we will handle this. So that's why I thought today was such a big win for us. I mean, to get swept by Colorado and then get back home and get swept by San Diego would not have been good.
Yeah, we might have canceled the gathering tonight. Yes. Bruce Bochy has an ear infection. He can't be here tonight. Yes.
Would have made for a great show tomorrow, though, right?
Well, that's true, Brian. That's true. Well, tomorrow we'll be talking World Cup soccer is what we'll be doing. No, I think we'll sneak Timmy into the show a little bit. Brian, for you as a GM, every fan out there, not every fan, but a lot of them on the Twitter and in the calls, they want changes, and they want changes now. And they bench this guy, trade that guy, met this guy out of the rotation. Make a move, Brian. What are you doing?
Spend some money, Brian. Let's go.
So talk to us about how you guys react in the executive office to a hot streak of, my God, let's not touch a thing, or to a cold streak. We got to make a change. Because you did. You called up Joe Panic. And maybe you can explain to us how something like that happens. Yeah, that's a lot more ready.
Simply put, it's a long view model. And you do this year round, and it's a lot like, any information gathering exercise, a decision-making exercise. It has to be done over time. And the only way you can heal yourself first is your options within. That was what was ironic when we get off to the fast start, in no particular order, but probably chronologically, we were without Scuro, Belt, Casilla, Pagan just recently. We missed starts. We don't have the deepest bench in the world. And, we capitalized. I've always been, and Larry will tell you this, and I don't know if it's my sixth sense or how I grew up in the game in the Steinbrenner era with the Steinbrenner Yankees. I'm a half full guy. And that can cut both ways, because your gut sometimes is and I can be pretty rough one-on-one or behind closed doors, just the opposite, half empty. But I know in the long run that the organization's got an incredible will to win. We have enough resources and more than enough backing by ownership to do what we need to do on a yearly basis to compete. And when the timing's right, after all the information's gathered, and you have all the chips on the table, and you decide what cards you can play, in concert, there's a collaborative effort between Larry and I and ownership, Bruce, the coaching staff, the front office, and more so the scouts that are deployed to give you the best information possible to see what you can do from the outside world. But that's really the last resort, because it's very complicated just to move forward into next year. Pablo's a free agent. Romo's a free agent. Morse is a free agent. Vogelsong's a free agent. Our budgets are a good thing, and I think Larry will admit this. One of the reasons we won the World Series 2 out of 3 years, or 2 out of 4 years, is that we did a hell of a job staggering our payrolls and knowing when to ramp up and knowing when to have so many guys on a long-term contract and so many guys on a short-term contract. You saw this year, it was a shorter view of the world, because that was needed based on the model we have at the current time. So it's not like every player is going to be available to you. That's just not practical financially. It's not like every organization you're going to have a match with and have an ability to trade for what your need is of that particular player. So middle of June, not a heck of a lot happens. My personal view of the world, there'll be fewer marquee players available. If they are, it'll be later. And there are more and more teams, because of the second wild card, just competing to get in the postseason. So there's a lot of conversations on a daily, weekly basis between the general manager and ownership. Are we going for it? Are we middling it? Or are we selling off? And there'll be far few teams that are going to sell off early. And I think, that probably leads into Larry's comments on what's happened to the industry. It's tough to win a baseball game now. It's tough to win a series. It's tough to win a week. It's tough to win a month. It's tough to go to the playoffs. They've gotten what they wanted, which is parity. And it's turned back to 60s baseball, where it's pitching, defense, and base running. It's tough to score 4 runs.
Wait, Steinbrenner was a half full guy? Right.
Maybe empty.
Well, that leads into, Larry, it's June 26th or 5th, and we're a month away from the trade deadline. And it's not just what Brian's going to do. It's not going to be just what Bruce tells him he needs, but it's going to be what you and ownership decide he can do. Maybe you could take us into that. To say, I'm trying for you, Bruce. Yeah. Bruce was like, yeah, keep going, yeah.
The answer better be yes, right? Or I'm off the stage.
We're going to trade you 2 stalks of kale and something for a reliever. No, but how do you guys come to those decisions as an owner? I don't even know if Giants fans really know who makes those decisions to expand the purse strings. I believe Charles Johnson is the majority owner. He does not do much media. He does no media. How do you guys come to those decisions and tell Brian and Bruce what they can and can't do?
I mean, it's pretty simple, actually. I mean, it's really, Brian and Bruce put together the recommendation with scouts and with information from their staffs. And we talk about it, and we try to figure out what makes sense. There's not really a lot. The owners of the team, we have 35 owners. And everybody remembers, I think, back in 1993, the Giants were almost the Tampa Bay Giants. Mm-hmm. And the group, yes.
Yeah. Come on, it's such a beautiful stadium down there. It's gorgeous.
And the reality is, we have owners, most of the owners now that are with us are from that initial group that saved the team back then, or descendants of theirs. Some have passed on. And they're in this for civic reasons. They wanted to keep the team. They also want to win. And so if we have a better opportunity to win, and we can do it without losing a lot of money, and keep it financially responsible. Our big thing, Brian, is not to do this kind of thing, okay, with the franchise. And as we've gone through this journey with Brian and Bruce, each year we've raised payroll some. Each year we've made it available to at the break or at the trade deadline, which is July 31st, to add to the team if it makes sense. As Brian will tell you, you can bring a great player over here, but if the cost isn't so much the financial cost. I mean, that's one of the things you look at, but there's also a cost in prospects, because you're bringing a player over, the team that's losing a good player is reloading usually. And so it's prospects, and they have to evaluate, is it okay to lose those prospects? And I got to tell you, we live in the world of batting averages. The averages have been pretty good in the trade deadline deals.
Yeah.
Hunter Pence, Marco Scutaro, Pat Burrell, Javier Lopez.
Cody Ross off waivers.
Cody Ross in August. Cody Ross after the trade deadline.
Javier Lopez.
So
right?
yeah, so it's really the case, and I think Brian, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but there some tempting players that may be dangled your way, but do you want to empty out the farm system to acquire them?
Yeah. Speaking of which, that comes to revenue, purse strings, and this stadium, this park you guys have built. That I recall when it was built, some said you'll never pull it off. You guys are going to go bankrupt. You're going to have to sell the team. You've put yourself in an untenable financial situation, right? Here we are, year 15?
What's that?
Year 15 of the park?
Year 15, yeah.
I
Pretty
think
amazing.
It's been a success. A little bit, yeah. Maybe just a tiny bit. So, I mean, is that what it comes down to? Is how many butts you put in seats is the revenue that you can give to Brian Sabean?
Well, and to make it, I mean, if you go back to that model, our model, we had to do something a little different than was commonly done in those days when we opened our ballpark. In those days, you'd open the ballpark usually to a spike, you'd sell out for a year or two, and there'd be the honeymoon period, and then you would decline. It's just kind of what happened in baseball, right? And the decline would still be many cases better than the old parks. So parks that opened around when we opened, Houston and Pittsburgh and some Detroit and Seattle, they'd have a fall off. They'd still be decent attendance. We couldn't afford that. We needed to stay around 3 million every year. So we had to the motto in the front office was we had to defeat the honeymoon early on, not in years 1, 2, or 3, but years 3 through 15. And it's allowed us, to your point, Brian, it's allowed us to fund and the resources that we need. It's our 15th year, and 12 of the 14 years we've been over 3 million attendance. Yeah. There were people that said that San Francisco wasn't a baseball town. I think it's a baseball town. It's a baseball town and a football town.
Especially when the football team moves to Santa Clara. Right? That helps. Well, okay, great. A lot of big picture. Let's talk a lot of turkey about this year's team. You know, we've established the model. The park's full. You guys have a nice payroll. You've been playing well. Now let's talk about some of the things going on. Boch, when's Pagan coming back? And how, I mean, how incredible. It seems like he's directly linked to the team's one-loss record. And I know that it can't be true that one guy affects the one-loss record that much, but maybe you can tell us what it does to you as a manager to have him and to not have him, and how's he looking?
Well, he is such a key player for our offense. I mean, he's our leadoff hitter. He's a good on-base guy. He can hit good pitching. He can drive in a run. You know, that gets overlooked with Angel, and so we saw what life was without him last year, and how good he made us go when we were going well. I mean, he was the guy that really was carrying us there, getting on base, making things happen. And now my hope is he went on the DL today. He can come off the DL in the series against St. Louis, so he would miss the Cincinnati series, and then hopefully he's okay to go then. But you know, when you have a leadoff hitter or switch hitter that's, you know, has the ability to get things going, ignite you, it just makes you a different club. And I love Blanco because he gives us a good option when Angel can't go, but you know, he's having a tough time getting on base now, and we're sputtering a little bit with the offense. That leadoff hitter can make a club, and Angel, he did that for us up until we hit our little skid there.
So the Cardinals series, hopefully, fingers crossed. You know, backs are temperamental things, so we'll watch that. Another guy you lost that affected the way you managed is Brandon Belt. And what a start he had, my Lord. I'm sure Brian in the front office had evaluated him and said, we're going with him. I mean, a lot of people had varied opinions on him, and so kind of asked both of you about Belt and what it's done to you as a manager and your lineup, and then what kind of you expect for him when he comes back.
Yeah, that's what the signing of Michael Morris was such a big sign for us, and I think Brian, for getting this guy signed because he gave us that versatility of playing left field and first base. It softened the blow of losing to Brandon Belt. I've always said you can get by losing a position player a little easier than a starting pitcher or a setup guy or closer, and Morris has done that for us by going to first base and doing a good job. Now, we need Brandon Belt back, and he starts his rehab tomorrow. He'll DH in San Jose. He'll probably be there for 3 games, and once at that point his arm should be okay to throw, then we'll bump him up to Fresno, and we're probably looking at 10 days or so. I mean, we'll bring him up when we think he's ready. We'll make sure he's ready, but it's pretty amazing. And his first batting practice in Arizona, it looked like he didn't miss a beat coming off a broken thumb. I mean, he was smoking the ball, hitting line drives everywhere. So that would enable us to put Morris back in left field. It's going to stretch out our lineup and give us a little more pop there. So we missed him, but Morris made that loss of Belt a little easier to deal with. And the fact that we had Angel, Blanco could play left field, or Colvin. So life wasn't as bad as it could have been. Where your leadoff hitter, that's a little tougher to replace.
And Brian, that's where it leads to you. And you're the guy who in the winter, you made 2 big signings. Michael Morris and Tim Hudson, who's, I mean, I think fans have pretty much declared you 2 for 2 on those signings. I mean, Morris is fan. My wife's in love with him, by the way. Yeah. She's like, he smiles so much. He's so great. Yeah. And everybody else loves Hudson with the ground balls and the double plays, and also just what he brings. I mean, he's one of those baseball gamers, flirting with a Hall of Fame career, right? So maybe tell us about what signing those 2 guys. How do you take us inside that front office in the winter? And do you have a grease board? And were those the guys written in orange and black ink there?
I don't remember how many exact meetings we had, but I know that prior to the GM's meetings and then after the GM's meetings going into the winter meetings, we pretty much had 3 working lists. And they were hit lists of different forms. And quite frankly, again, going back to what we thought the model needed to be with our upcoming business at hand, which was the end of 2014, we needed the biggest impact we could get on short-term contracts. And both guys were kind of under the radar. What was interesting about Hudson And as we were dabbling to see what his interest might be coming back west, because we felt he was so ingrained to being back east, because he lives very close to Atlanta, all those years to Atlanta, went to Auburn University, in fact now has moved back to Auburn, very active with the school. You know, that was important for us to know. And once we knew that he was prepared to make a pretty fast decision, you know, we had a price point and we had some wiggle room, but it happened very fast because it was very mutual. Now, the Morris thing, speaking more to as the Timmy signing was underway and bringing Vogelsong back, both on short-term contracts, we knew we had to do something with the offense, but we had to get the right guy. And Boch was the biggest proponent if we could take a chance on a guy that was versatile, take a chance that really could, if healthy, affect our lineup and kind of relieve some of the pressure, because he's a presence. And we saw what he did in Washington, ironically, as a first baseman. So to his point, you know, we actually got a two-way player that, you know, Lord willing, when he came into spring training, we kind of monitored his day-to-day situation, didn't overtax him, moving him back to left field every day. And in a way, it might be a blessing for him for the rest of the season that he hasn't played all these innings in left field, because when Bell comes back, of course, he'll go out to left. And now that we brought up Duval, he might even play some more left to get another bat in the lineup. So they both happened over time. As you know, I think Hudson was probably before Thanksgiving, and we had a dinner in the winter meetings where we kind of isolated, you know, our remaining move and how we could execute it. And literally the next morning, after conversations that evening and into the next day, we found out that Morse wanted to come as much as Hudson and was willing to do a one-year deal. So why it happens like this, why you get that lucky, I'm not sure.
Well, and there was actually, we kind of take it for granted because we didn't think of it as a free agent, but if we rewind the tape even a little bit further, Hunter Pence was to be a free agent. We ended up, and you know, Brian was adamant, as he should have been, that we basically didn't want Hunter to get out of town before the season ended. Get on a scooter and go to LA.
Stop that scooter, yes.
So I'll never forget, it was Friday night, I think before game 160. We ended the season Friday, Saturday, Sunday at home. And the discussions with the agent, discussions with Hunter, and Brian's strategy for it was to, you know, try to make something happen literally before the season ended. So it was that Friday night, and the deal came together, and it was concluded actually in Boch's office that Friday night at 12:30, 1 o'clock. I'll never forget. So everybody's shaking hands, hugs, maybe a glass of wine, and then day game the next day. It's 1 o'clock. Hunter, can I, we'll get you a car, we'll get you an Uber? No. I'm getting on my scooter. We just handed the man $90 million, and he's scooting down the Embarcadero. Such is life.
He's a beauty. And by the way, he and Tim Lincecum tweeted out pictures of themselves in the U.S. Soccer jerseys at the end of the game today. They're all fired up for tomorrow morning. It's just he's got that kind of spirit.
Yeah.
So let's use that good vibe to ask you point blank: are you re-signing Pablo Sandoval? Barbara didn't
Who is
want
that
all
question
softballs,
directed
right? Yeah.
Simply put, it's complicated. We all know it's complicated.
I know.
Without getting into what the past has been, it is about performance. It is about short and long-term budgets, and it's about being in the best spot to make a good deal for both parties. At this time, there are no conversations. I don't expect there will be. We table things because it got into the season, and the bridge or the gap was just so far apart in philosophy, including hard dollars. You just couldn't bridge that gap. So we'll see what happens at the end of the year and how things stack up with his season and how we look at his situation going forward with the ball club, because it's another huge investment.
It is.
I might mention that in previous cycles, we've had guys that, some guys we've signed before they're up, but other guys play out the year and then they sign at the end of the year playing it out. And that's Hunter's an example of that. So we've kind of done it both ways. So we, as Brian says, we have an open mind.
Well, it brings up if he would leave, and it would be kind of crazy to imagine the Giants without Panda, and I don't know what you do with your Panda hats, quite frankly.
It's an issue.
But to Bruce, you got to write your lineup card, and then your third base could become an issue. And a lot of people have wondered if Buster Posey is a future third baseman. I know that's it's a big question because the people are worried about concussions, and people are wondering maybe you move Hector Sanchez into catcher. If Pablo leaves, you save a little money. You can spend money somewhere else on a pitcher. Blah blah blah. There's a lot going on, and I'm sure Brian has it all written out on his grease board. But is Buster Posey a future third baseman, Bruce? Sorry. He thought it was going to be easier.
I'll say it's a possibility. I mean, he played shortstop in college, but, he's our catcher. And, catchers, the more they catch, the little slower they get. Their head, their legs are a little heavier. And, by the time we would even think about that, I think it would be more of a lone shot. I think he has the hands to do it, the arm to do it, but there's so much that goes on there, handling slow rollers. You want a guy with pretty good range there. And it is something that I think you'd have to talk about, discuss, but I just don't right now see that happening.
Yeah.
I'm the one that came out and said, hey, he could probably play third base now, but right now he's our catcher. Now, you put him behind the plate another 4 or 5 years and then tell him to go play third base, it might be a little different.
Well, let me spin it in a more positive way then. Is he your long-term catcher? And by that I mean you look at the great Carlton Fisk, caught into what you guys would know until he was 43 years old, something like that. I mean, there's no rule that says just because you're a catcher, you can only do it for a small window of time. Can he do it X number of years?
Well, that's our hope, and I know Brian's mentioned it. I mean, when we signed him long-term, and to the deal that we signed him to, that was to be our catcher.
Okay, yeah.
And that's where his biggest value is to us, is have him behind the plate. I mean, we have Bell at first base, and Pablo's at third. I don't know what's going to happen there, but that's where you want Buster, because he's an impact guy behind the plate. He's one of the best catchers in the game all around, with the offensive numbers and his defense. So, now you put him at first base, he's going to be a good first baseman, but the bigger impact will, to have him behind the plate, because you don't find catchers like Buster Posey. You just don't. Johnny Bench, maybe a Fist, somebody like that. It just doesn't happen very often. So we're pretty.
He said Bruce Bochy is on that list.
No, I didn't quite make that list.
Well, Brian, did you sign him to be your catcher for the?
Well, the size of the contract and the way the contract had to be constructed and kind of fold into what the industry view of the world is. Of course we did. Yeah. I think the great thing about his versatility and the manager's ingenuity is we can get him to first base. We don't have the luxury of the American League, which would be another godsend because you could DH him. You have some of those games being played throughout your season, and we've also done some of that, and we'll continue to do that. I personally am with Bruce. Third base is a very demanding position physically. I mean, we've seen what Pablo's gone through, and he, by the way, started as a catcher. He came up in our system really as a switch-hitting catcher. That we decided to, move to the infield and move to the corner. And I think the simplest way to put it is that the way we're constituted now, it's a nice luxury because Belt needs his days, maybe, or especially against left-handed pitching. And we need to get Sanchez in the lineup because he's probably one of the best backup catchers in baseball. And it was so good that he got a chance to be a part of this because he's put a lot of hard work behind the scenes to
Hector
kind of be
Sanchez.
Buster's caddy.
Catching Timmy's, he was cute in the post-game press conference too. But Larry, I mean, you guys signed Buster, and I guess that speaks to kind of another big thing of this master plan: the long-term deal for Buster, the long-term deal for Kane, the long-term deal for Hunter Pence. A really team-friendly long-term deal for a guy we haven't even mentioned who's the baddest dude in town, Madison Bumgarner. Okay? So, I mean, you guys are unafraid to do this. And maybe it is the model now. You see it, Joey Votto, other guys getting these long-term deals. Clayton Kershaw is pretty good. I know, he's pretty good, though.
Well,
yeah,
I think it is the design, the blueprint you'd like to create for the franchise, which is take your, and it all starts, by the way, with scouting. take your homegrown players that you draft, that you work through the system, and sign them up long term, and sign them up before their free agent years when possible, or maybe they play their free agent year and then you still sign them. We've done it both ways, as we said earlier, and and you look at the guys we've signed long term, and then you look at kind of who's behind them. Got the Brandons, Brandon Crawford and Brandon Belt, and some of the other players that are coming through. We think there's a great crop coming through, and that if you can sprinkle free agent signings to buffet that, I think that's a powerful way to set the organization up, as opposed to the opposite, which is sort of put it all together with free agents, because that's tough to do, and it's expensive to do, and it's risky, and by definition, free agents are older. So in many ways, and something that doesn't get noticed that much, in many ways it comes down to scouting, drafting, and developing. And we have, Brian has a staff that's, led by John Barr, who's drafting players, and Dick Tidrow, who's developing them and participating in all that. So that's a big part of what you do, and that's a way to be able to afford it too, because ultimately you can't have a free agent in every position.
In fact,
I want to mention just about just one quick thing about today's game, which was very cool. They couldn't believe this. About game time, Adam Duvall shows up.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So he called up, and his flight was delayed. I think the team was playing in Round Rock, right? So he flies in from Austin, and he gets to the game, and then his parents are flying in separately from Kentucky, Louisville, and they come in. They get about game time too. So I'm sitting actually with his parents. So my son Josh and I are sitting with his parents, and they're having a great time, and they're like, "Wow, this is always like this," and they're having excitement, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
and, it was a great introduction to the Giants for Adam and for his parents.
Yeah, it's I pictured in the congratulations, Adam having to introduce himself to Tim before congratulating him, right? Hi, I'm Adam, congrats. By the way, speaking of the drafts that Brian and his crew, just to list some of the guys, Matt Cain, Tim Lincecum, Madison Bumgarner, Sergio Romo, 28th round, Buster Posey, Brandon Crawford, Brandon Belt, Joe Panic. These are all guys that you guys drafted. And then add the guys you developed on your own out of Latin America, Pablo Sandoval, Hector Sanchez, guys like that. So it's a pretty good list it's a pretty good list. They've done, and no pressure, but maybe Joe Panic, Adam Duvall, Kyle Crick, Derek Law, Andrew Susak. These are the names you're going to get to know. I mean, I'm sure there's some hardcore seam heads out there that know these names already, but there's a crew coming up. There is a crew coming up. Clayton, what's the guy? It's Clayton Blackburn, right? Down in San Jose. All right, we have 5 minutes left before you guys get to ask 20 minutes worth of questions. So think of your questions and find the microphone. So let's just kind of do a quick hitter here as we kind of do quick answers. First and foremost, Bruce, instant replay. How's it working? Does it stink? I'm not feeling it. Are you guys? It kind of slows the game down.
I think it's got to be improved. I do think we have to tweak it. I like it. And the fact that we're getting the calls right for the most part, but even with instant replay,
okay. All right. You guys like it?
Because I think the best team should win. Should be a call that determine whether you win or not.
Do you miss
which
arguing?
Can't happen.
Do you miss arguing with the guys? Yeah.
It is strange when you go to the umpire now. Usually you go out and you get madder, and you get. It saved me some money so far. You go out there, you just, hey, how's the family doing? I'm waiting to see what Sean Dunston thinks back there. So it is a different game.
Brian, how much are you looking at the Dodgers? And how much do they factor in your game? Yeah, go ahead. You can boom. Yeah. Keep it coming. Yeah.
But, we were asked the same thing in 12, and how did that turn out?
Yeah, all right.
I mean, they made the Boston trade, and we were supposed to go to, turn to dust, and that didn't happen. So you got to take care of your own business.
Okay.
I mean, it's that simple.
Okay, confident. I like it. Larry, real quick, do you have Levi's Stadium envy?
No, not at all. I mean, I think, look, we feel very blessed to have what we have. When we built the ballpark, it was really kind of the code that we used in terms of other parks was Wrigley Field meets Camden Yards. So it was the best of the old, married to some of the new baseball architecture, and we wanted to stand the test of time. So what we wanted, when we think of the Giants, just like you think of the Cubs, you think of Wrigley, you think of the Red Sox, you think of Fenway, think of the Yankees, you think of Yankee Stadium. We want people over time to think of our ballpark as you think of the Giants, and I think that's happening. And we wanted to respect the tradition of the ballpark, but we also want to do new things, like the garden, to make each year something special at the ballpark. And I think the 49ers, Levi Stadium's going to be great, and we wish them well. We have the symbiosis with the 49ers. We have a good. Tell you a very quick story. You remember Alex Smith, of course, and he had this wonderful habit because he was a big Giants fan. Is a big Giants fan still, and his fiance at the time, now wife, was a big Giants fan. Grew up in San Jose, and so he would wear Giants caps when he did the 49ers press conference. Well, he received a couple of letters from our friends at the NFL saying, bad, no bueno, you can't do that, that's not good. You need to wear some 49er official headgear that somebody's paying for you to wear. So we sent Alex a note and they said that basically if you don't do it, you're getting fined. We sent Alex a note, we'll pay your fine, keep wearing the Giants.
The smart businessman. I want to ask, just kind of end it on, it's not meant to be somber, but meant to be a tribute to one of the greatest baseball players we ever saw, and that's Tony Gwynn. And yeah. And I know it's hard for you, Bruce, to talk about him because you played with him, you managed him. The guy's, you and Tim Flannery were as close to him as anybody. But maybe you could share with everybody here tonight a memory or two of Tony Gwynn, maybe the player and the person, because you guys are going to be down there next week. And you get to go pay your respects to the statue or whatever you're going to do. But maybe you can just tell us, because we didn't get to play or manage with him. So what was it like?
Yeah, Tony was what you would want every player to be. He just loved the game, had a passion for it. He just wanted to play baseball. And what gets lost sometimes on Tony was how good an all-around player he was. He was a great outfielder, a great base runner. But the best hitter I ever saw as far as a single contact type hitter. Now Bonds was a power hitter, but Tony was a pioneer with the video stuff, but it was just Tony as a teammate, and that's what I think he would be most proud of, all the things being said about him. Forget the talent. We all know he's a great player, but this guy truly was a tremendous teammate, a very, very humble man, and a tremendous family man that, just did things right. He was no maintenance for a manager. As a teammate, we were close. We played cards together and did things where we would always talk baseball. And that's all he wanted to do is talk baseball. All he did is watch ESPN. But what I liked about him, he taught players to make themselves available to the fans. And back then, they weren't so nice. Players are better today than they were in the late 70s and the early 80s. He always there for the fans and the media, stand-up guy. And so he's getting all the tributes he's earned on the type of person he was.
Yeah, Tony Gwynn, ladies and gents, rest in peace. So, Barbara Lane is over there, our wonderful host. She's got the orange blazer. She's easy to see.
Yep.
And this is your guys' event, so you guys get to ask questions. Barbara, you want to take it from here?
Yeah, so just put up your hands, Siri, and I will get to you. But before we do, we have some tickets to give away.
Ooh.
San Francisco Giants versus Milwaukee Brewers, August 31st. Amy Hymans and Gordon Harris. Gordon Harris. So here you go. Come on down.
Amy.
And just put up your hands if you have a question, and we're coming to you. We'll start right here.
Amy, I believe that's R2D2 Beanie Night, correct, Larry? It is.
Something like that.
It is, because I got my kids' tickets that night.
We'll figure it out. We'll come up with it. Actually, I'll tell you what it
August
is.
31, Star Wars R2D2
Is it really?
Beanie Night.
You serious?
These guys with their knights, they're amazing. Yeah.
Yep.
Am I right?
Our first
R2D,
question
yep.
is right here.
Am I right?
You're right. You got it.
First of all, I just
You
want to
got
say
memorized.
thank you to the whole Giants organization on this new style of baseball. I'm a native San Franciscan, and I just love how the players play for each other. There's no real big superstars, and it just seems to have this new dynamic ability to win games for each other that, as a San Franciscan, I just love this new style of baseball.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And my question that I want to ask is Bruce Bochy. I wonder how come more players don't attempt to at least fake a bunt just to bring in the fielders a little bit, you know, even if they're not going to bunt. It seems like if I'm playing baseball and I used to play first base, if I know the bunt, if I'm thinking they're going to bunt, you know, I'm going to play it a little differently, and I think it could throw the other team off a little bit. Do you guys ever think about doing that, or do you already put that in place?
No, first of all, thanks for the nice comments. No, it's a great question, and especially today with the shifts that are going on, we're spending a lot of time on some of these guys who aren't normally bunters. Brandon Belt, for example, they're shifting on him so much. He can take care of that shift by bunting and beating that shift, but even the other players, we've talked to Blanco about bunting more. We've had him out the last 2 days to get him comfortable bunting to first base. We probably could bunt a little more, but you know, if you look at our club, we don't have a lot of bunters. I mean, Posey's not going to bunt.
Brian didn't
Morris
give you
isn't
any,
gonna
He
bunt.
prefers the three-run homer, trust me.
Yeah, and you know, they know I like to homer. But you know, all kidding aside, that was a good point because if you bring them in, then you got a better chance of hitting the ball by them.
Next one is right here in the front.
Hi, I've been a season ticket holder since '92, and I really like your campaign, All of Us Together. It really resonates for me. And as you've been talking, been a good time for the Giants these days, these years. So why can't you sign a contract with the concession workers?
Well, the short answer to that is it's not the concession workers, it's not a contract for us to sign. It's the workers, local 2, and the concession company. And so we're not a party to that contract. And it's up to them to work out the contract. And that's the reality.
The next question's here to your left. Over here.
I was wondering, now that there are 15 teams in each division and there's always interleague play, what your views are on the designated hitter and whether there's an advantage to one league or the other depending on what ballpark you're playing in.
Brian, you want to take that?
I'm too old school. I can't stand it, period. I understand how well it's gone over, but it's terrible to navigate if you're a manager, coach, or player, as it's sprinkled in the schedule. It's impossible to scout and get ready for. I hope that Larry's got a bigger and better position, or I'll be on a beach somewhere, or hell will freeze over before I'll be in the National League with the DH. So I guess that's the best way I could answer it. I'm not a fan. I think that, you know, we play the purest form of baseball. The Hall of Fame manager proves the point. There's so much strategy in the National League, and you know, with or without what baseball's going to do with replay or pace of game that Larry hears all the time. If you want 4-hour games and no young kids watching this game, and you know, I'm from the Yankee organization. I know all about those rivalries back east, but watch a Boston Red Sox game and a Yankee game. I mean, you can go out to dinner, go out to a play, have dessert, and come home, and the game will still be on because it's 4.5 hours long.
Next question is up here in the back.
Hi, thanks for coming out tonight. What I wanted to ask about, you talked a lot about when you're scouting and the players that you look at and, you know, some of the old school versus the new kids coming up. How much of the players' personality and how they're going to fit into the clubhouse comes into play? Some of these intangible things. And I know conversely, I've heard the players talk about how they want to play in San Francisco because they're sold out every night. So those intangible factors, how do they come into play?
Yeah,
Not numbers.
That's really a good question, and I think Murph and Larry will attest to this. And you know, you folks that really followed the Bill Walsh era, there's kind of an old saying in football, and it was a Walshism. You know, talent can overcome a lot of warts with somebody, and if you have somebody that's got a high level of talent and a high level of character or professionalism, and you've hit a home run. I know Felipe Alou was a big believer on that, and it makes Bruce's job so much easier. You know, what we try to do, similar to the military, is that, you know, we kind of put them in their place in the minor leagues, and we try to make sure that, you know, we don't invite any ants to the picnic. Once they come up here, they're going to be ready to contribute in more ways than one, but it's really how you walk into that clubhouse, how you prepare yourself, how you're accountable, and how you understand about being a teammate and have to do it on an everyday basis on you know, the biggest stage. So I'll give all our scouts, and more so our player development people, the credit in the world after they sign these people to really just mold them. They're clay to mold, and we can have a lot to do with it. I think we do a really good job with it.
That means they won't be signing Yasiel Puig anytime soon.
Next question's midway here to your left.
This is for Larry, and I'm not sure how candid you're going to be with this, but has there been any real thought given to bringing in the fences in right center?
That's a good question. Happy to be candid. No. and I'll tell you why. And it's funny because I remember we've had a couple of players, and I sit usually, not always, but usually down in the first row by the really behind the on-deck circle near the dugout. And there have been a couple of players over the years hit a ball, shot left-handed hitter, hits a shot to right center field. I think Aubrey was actually one of them. I'll reveal he's a good guy. Shot to right center field, caught at the 421 mark, comes running back, you know, to the dugout, and he says, "Bring in the damn fences, will you?" And look, we could always change our mind. Things always open to change. But I think when the ballpark was designed, and Brian should weigh in on this, the idea was this is a ballpark that we're going to design a team around, and it's a pitching-centric team. I personally, this is my personal view, is from a fan interest standpoint, a really good tight 3-2 game can be as compelling as a 9-8 game. So I don't think having more runs scored just per se makes the team more attractive or the event more attractive or the game more attractive. But from contours of the ballpark, I mean, it's really, this is what we are. I remember as we were designing the ballpark and getting a lot of input from everybody, Mike Krukow said, as we were looking at the dimensions, Kruk said, have a part of the ballpark for the pitchers to pitch to. And the 421 to right center field is that. The National League, or actually Major League Baseball, when they first saw our dimensions, rejected them because they said 309 down the right field line, even with a 26-foot high wall, was going to be too short and it was going to be a bandbox. And what we've seen on the year one, I think we had the second fewest home runs hit in baseball. So I think it's a unique ballpark. We wanted it to be asymmetrical because we thought it was interesting for it to be that way, and very much, not like the cookie cutter ballparks that seemed to come in the 70s, the multi-purpose ballparks. And I'll leave it to Brian to talk about how he designs the team around the ballpark to some extent. It's certainly not a perfect application, but I don't believe there's ever been really serious discussion about bringing in the fences.
Well, if you go back to the Bonds era and some of the teams that we had, most of those teams were really right-handed. And anybody that plays in the park will tell you that the park's more geared for a right-handed power hitter. Bonds is probably the only left-handed hitter that we'll ever have, or that has ever come in here, that made it look short in right field. But to that point, or Larry's point, I guess the intrigue of the theater watching the game is that there's so much more involved with the defense and the speed factor. You know, what can become a triple, how you can score from first to home, how you can, you know, literally win a game by cutting the ball off in the alley. And you see how it affects other teams. Bruce will tell you, there are teams that come in here and play their right fielder, you know, damn near in right center field, and it changes the alignment. And Bruce will also tell you that if you get a home run hitter, we have some guys that can hit home runs. Morse is probably the only guy that's considered a home run hitter, but Pence and him can make that ballpark look pretty small, and they're right-handed hitters.
Yeah. By the way, speaking of Bonds, real quick, did want to ask Boch what he thought of his new hitting instructor sitting in the front row. I don't know if everybody saw this. Monday night, Mike Morse was standing on the dugout steps and started talking to a guy in the stands about hitting. And I said, what this guy? It was Bonds. And Bonds was telling him his backside was collapsing and more. And are you sitting there thinking, holy cow, I got another coach on my hands here, huh?
Well, he came to spring training. He helped out. You know, this guy has a lot of knowledge, and I know Morse has really attached himself to Barry, and really feels that he's helped him a lot because he's a power hitter, and so they really do talk quite a bit. And Barry would come into the clubhouse occasionally. He lives in the city now, so you know, we've been seeing more and more of him. But I know anytime you get somebody who's had the success that Barry's had, you welcome that knowledge, and hopefully help these guys get out of their little slumps or skids, whatever.
Yeah, it was a great sight.
Next question is up here to your right in the back.
Yes, thank you. I just want to mention that even though I don't look that old, I actually did attend many Giant games in the Polo Grounds.
Wow.
My dad.
You don't look that old.
Thank
No,
you.
Yes.
My dad, who's 97, used to take me. We lived about a 30-minute subway ride to the Polo Grounds, and also Yankee Stadium, obviously, if you know New York. And I saw the Giants play in the Polo Grounds, and I just have very, very fond memories of the New York Giants. But my question is, I read that Jeremy Affeld's contract had an error in his favor of, I think it was an order of magnitude of $50,000, which he did bring to the team's attention, but had he said nothing, he would have gotten that money. So my question is, how could an error like that ever happen? And have you tightened quality control so it'll never happen again?
Well, the best way to answer it, thank God it was 50,000 and not 5 million. You have no idea how many balls, you know, our contract people juggle, and how many lines they're involved in a contract, including incentives, et cetera, et cetera. So I think Jeremy more so gave himself a pat on the back publicly, which kind of was disappointing and made us look bad. But mistakes happen, and you know, we appreciate his honesty and his integrity.
You talk about integrity. I just have to chime in with Jeremy. I think he has a show on KNBR now, and maybe some of this comes out. But in the 22 years or so that I've been with the Giants in this iteration, I've never seen anybody more community-minded and doing more. I mean, he's actually written a book on human trafficking, and he attaches himself and his notoriety as a professional athlete to causes in very powerful ways. So he's a guy that I think we all love, and we'd love to kid, and we love to joke around with him, but he's a really quite an amazing guy.
Yeah, I can add, the radio show, without, Lee Hammer probably doesn't want me to say this, but all the players like to get paid. Jeremy said, don't pay me, I want you to promote my charity and give whatever money you'd give to me to the charity too. So that's the kind of guy he is. Yeah.
Next question up here to your left.
Well, I just want to say congratulations. You have a great team, a great organization, a great ballpark, and it's a good time to be a Giants fan. We didn't mention it tonight, but I think one of the great things about the Giants is the announcers. We got the best announcers. One of my favorite things is on a Saturday or Sunday day game, take my transistor radio, go outside in the yard, and listen to John Miller call the game, because it's a thing of beauty. He's just so great at it, and I feel bad that he has to do so many damn commercials. So you came to the JCC, you must have known there was going to be some complaining. So here's my complaint. It's too many commercials, just too many. It's really excessive. And so my question is, pretty soon, will every pitch be brought to you by somebody?
Wow. Well, we'll move stations if KNBR asks for that. We'll switch stations. I have to say that growing up here, we really are blessed, I think, with a tradition of great Giants announcers. How many people remember Russ Hodges, Lon Simmons? Lon still comes to games and is just a wonderful guy and a wonderful part of our organization. And I think, quite frankly, the announcers are the lead edge of the franchise. And I can't tell you the number of people that write us and say that it's really the background music of our summer is listening to the broadcasts on radio, watching the games on television, and Kruk and Kipe. I mean, they're a couple of buddies sitting around talking about the game. And John and Dave on radio, spectacular, you know, in our view. So we feel very lucky, very blessed. Duly noted on the commercials. I'll send a note. We'll fire something off to Hammer. Okay?
Yeah, believe me, your beef is with Lee Hammer, not with Larry Baer. I believe the Yankees are actually the standard bearers on that. I think they really do like each batter is brought to you by something or other. No joke. Yankees radio broadcasts have taken that to the next level, so it's out there. It's out there.
Next question is up here to your right.
So, oh, sorry. My question is for Larry also, more complaining, I guess. And it's kind of a non-seam head question, although I was super proud. My friends just told me I'm a seam head. Super excited about that. So one of the things that makes me very proud to be a Giants season ticket holder is the way that the Giants are so involved in the community and really, really connected to the city of San Francisco. And so my question is sort of because it's Pride Month, and I want to thank you for, this happened after the World Series in 2010, that like the day after the World Series, you showed up at the Castro Theater for a showing of the Glenn Burke film, when I just was thinking, you probably had a lot of other demands on your time, and I just have always wanted the opportunity to thank you for that. And also just really appreciate the way that the Giants support the LGBT community and really connect there. And so my question is, what's up with never a same-sex couple on the kiss cam?
Duly noted.
We'll take
no objection to that. I really appreciate, by the way, what you said about that. I think that something we've talked about a lot, and it's a sort of a founding principle of our organization, of our ownership group, is we wear San Francisco across our chest, and we need to be representative of this community, the greater community, and inclusiveness. You know, it kind of go back to the old days of ancient Greece, whatever. I mean, this is a town center, and we want people to come together and have shared values and shared experiences together as one in the community. And I think baseball has that rare opportunity to bring people together with inclusiveness. And I think it's wonderful in the community. And I think actually tomorrow night is LGBT night, if I'm not mistaken. So very appropriate timing.
Next question's way up here at the top.
Last week too? Okay.
Up here at the top.
I'm 83 and I've seen Giants games since I grew up within walking distance of the Polo Grounds. This discussion would have made this day right near the top. When I got this ticket, I thought, well, why not go to the ball game too? My question is not to you four, but to everybody else. Who else was fortunate, like me, to also see this afternoon's game?
Yeah, all right. Yeah.
All right. That's good group.
Thank you. We've got another question down here to your right in the front row. Right over here.
Hey, Larry. Hey, guys. Question. Baseball, as we all know, is so rooted in history and tradition going back 100 years, and we all love the sport for that alone. I'm wondering if the young players coming up understand that, they have a sense of it, do they have historical perspective on the game, the Giants as well as beyond the Giants, the great Yankees, the great players of the 20s. Do they have any sense of that? And is that important to you?
It'd be good for you, Bruce, because you talk to these guys all the time. Yeah.
A lot of them do. I mean, not all of them, but that was the way it was when I played too. I mean, some were bigger baseball fans or want to learn more about the game. You know, what I really enjoyed, well, it's a tough week with Tony Gwynn dying, passing away, but I went to the back of the plane, and a lot of the players were asking about Tony. They wanted to know more about him. They knew him, but they wanted to know more and who the person was and really how good he was. So I think you'd be surprised. I mean, there's a lot of different things for these kids to do. They have the video games, their music, whatever. But I actually think more and more of them are becoming big baseball fans. If you walk in our clubhouse, they really have done a great job. You see that it's a wall of it's a Hall of Fame, a wall of history. As they go to their lockers, all the old players and managers, black and white pictures and their names on them. So, they can learn right there in the clubhouse. Throughout our clubhouse, we have a tribute to all the ex-Giants, and it's pretty cool that players ask about them.
And I can tell you that.
Footnote to that, though, when I came to the organization in '93, and to Larry and Peter's credit, and I had left the Yankee organization, this organization takes it to a different level as far as their ex-players and more so their living legends. I mean, our guys aren't statues. They're in the clubhouse. They're involved with this community. They're involved with this team. They're there from the beginning of spring training. And you can't imagine what it's like for a young kid, somebody that's been traded over, a free agent, to walk in, and Willie Mays is going to be in there, Cepeda's going to be in there, Marshall's going to be there, Felipe Alou, Barry Bonds. This is unheard of in baseball. So there's not only such a link with their past careers and the history of the game, but it's the strongest league in baseball as far as the alumni really and our brotherhood of what's our giant foundation, our past.
Well, my favorite that's exactly right. One of my favorite times just throughout the year is in spring training. There's it's set up, Bobby Evans sets this up with Mario Alioto, where the Giants alumni speak to the minor leaguers in the minor league camp. And you can hear a pin drop. And there's a couple hundred players there, and it's Willie Mays and Willie McCovey and Orlando Cepeda, Gaylord Perry, Will Clark, Jeffrey Leonard, on down the line. And it's very powerful. It's very powerful for them to absorb these great Giants and their stories and their paths, because their paths were filled with ups and downs. And it's a great thing, and I think that's really, we're very blessed by this sport, because the sport is, I think, the most generational sport, both from the fan standpoint, going to games as I did with my parents, my father, and also just experiencing the game through the eyes of ex-players. So it's a huge thing.
What a wonderful note to end on. This took, as Larry said, at least a couple of years to put together. So on behalf of the JCCSF, thanks so much to all of you for being here tonight. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Thanks. That's fun.